Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the XBE Thrive series powered by the Diversity Consortium. Today we're going to talk about the power of alignment. Just a little bit of housekeeping while we're getting going here. We are using Microsoft Teams, and you'll notice up at usually it's at the top, but sometimes it's at the bottom, sometimes it's on the sides. There's a little task bar there, and you'll be able to do a couple things there. You'll also see that there's a chat feature. So if we're asking any questions, or you would like to make a comment, or you would like further information about a topic that we discussed, please feel free to use that chat. We'll answer every single question, whether we do it today live or we will get back to you and make sure you get an answer. Just very briefly, the Diversity Consortium's purpose is to make a measurable difference in the supplier diversity landscape. So we work with corporations as well as what we're going to call XBEs, and you're going to hear that terminology a bit today. And XBE is essentially an all-inclusive term for all forms of disadvantaged or disabled, any kind of diverse business. So that might be LGBTQ, it might be women-owned business, it might be veteran business, it might be some form of minority, but there was no term. Even the DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, didn't cover it all. So we wanted to make sure that we had a term that included everybody. So with that said, we today have this definition of alliance that's powered by some of our partners, and here are just a handful of the partners that work with alliances and how we work together. And specifically today, we have Randall Dobbins from Business Partner Blueprint. And Randall, welcome.
Hi, Rob. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes what makes you do what you do?
Interesting, Rob. Thanks for asking. I got into this work having been a buyer for a Fortune 5 company and doing the work to identify and develop suppliers that could fit in our supply chain. And I realized there was a lot of good talent out there, but a lot of them represented so much risk that I just couldn't put the complexity of my company's supply chain into the hands of their business because there were just so many unknowns. And interestingly enough, in doing this work over 17 years of training XBEs on how to do this work, that issue is still prevalent. So my excitement around this topic today is, what is the secret handshake? What is it that you don't know? What is the problem that's preventing you from getting your multi-year, multi-million-dollar corporate contract? And the answer is the power of alliances, the power of collaboration, the power of picking partners to actually help you to put together a footprint of something that competes effectively with the big boys and gives your customer trust that you can do extremely well and exceed their expectations.
That is awesome. And so is that what Diversity Works is all about?
It actually is. As I mentioned, for over 17 years, we've been actually supporting women and minority business owners on the secrets to landing large corporate contracts. We actually have a proven system that's based on experience from being a buyer, from being a seller, from being a minority business owner, from being an end user. So there's about 6 different perspectives that go into what does it mean to address the complex sell and get buyers to actually trust you in their operations. And that's what Diversity Works is all about. It's telling XBEs the secret handshake to get in the door and never look back.
Well, that is awesome. Well, with all that said, let's talk about the power of alliances.
All righty. Well, with that, let's kind of level set with the WIFM. What's in it for me? All right. And what's in it for you is, hey, I'll go ahead and read these because I like these. It's like if you are looking to grow your business but your lead flow is unpredictable, if you need to stabilize and increase your sales pipeline but do not have enough requests for proposals, if you want to expand your operations yet are having difficulty meeting customer demands, if you're looking to increase your fulfillment capacity but not enough, but don't have enough working capital, if you are trying to find dependable business partners but are tired of losing money on failed partnerships, hey, been there, done that one. And if you need to attract the right staff for your team because you need reliable help to get to the next level, you might need to consider doing something other than going it alone. And one of the primary reasons that that's important in dealing with the Fortune 1000 is you have to be on par with the people that they're currently doing business with, and more precisely, your larger and in a lot of cases, better funded competitors. So that means that your business has to demonstrate competency in two different areas. You have to demonstrate competency in customer excellence. And that means that your products and services have to have the right features. They got to be at the right price. They have to have the right design. They have to be of an acceptable quality. You have to deliver it in a expected time frame. It has to be reliably put through on a consistent basis. You have to have the right services that goes around it, and you have to deliver value and or results, the bottom line. But you also internally have to look at what does it mean to have business excellence. So as you look through your organization, what is your recruitment process to make sure you don't have staffing shortages, your marketing program to make sure your pipeline is robust, your profitability so that you're not a bankruptcy risk, your growth plan so that you can actually scale as your customers scale. How do you execute the work? What are the systems in place to support the growth of the business and effectively communicating back and forth, up and down the supply chain to your customers and to your suppliers? Your project management to deal with the day-to-day business as well, the unknown or the special projects, or in the corporate space, the capital projects. And your technology investment to actually bring technological innovation in addition to process innovation and everything else. So when you start thinking about what you may currently have in place, but you start looking at these 16 different areas that you're being evaluated against, okay, when a corporate buyer is looking at your business, they're evaluating against these 16 dimensions. Your customer excellence, how do you compare to everyone else that they're talking with? And then the business excellence, how do your operations look? And can people trust their business needs with your business or within your business operations? So you start looking at that, you probably will identify a number of gaps.
No, this is really great, and you know, I love how you've pulled this together because it makes sense. You're right. I mean, they're going to evaluate you to your peers, and they're going to evaluate you for your products and services.
Absolutely. And with regard to what you can do, especially with alliances, you can shore up one of the biggest shortcomings when it comes to dealing with the Fortune 1000. And for lack of a better term, I want to call it the like us syndrome. And what I want you to think about, because this happens in your business as an XBE, all right? It's easy for you to do business with companies who are like you or like yours. It's the easiest thing you can do. And one of the things that buyers tend to handicap is looking at your systems and processes to realize how compatible your business is with theirs. At the gross extreme, if they have like a SAP or PeopleSoft or Oracle, if they have a huge ERP and you have one, then they already know a lot about your business because both of you have made that kind of investment. Right? They just know that you don't have to say anything else. You both operate with SAP. So now it's really more about the technical aspects because everybody already knows what the underlying systems and processes are based on an SAP implementation and the requirements that it brought into your company. Now, Because most XBEs don't have that, we actually need to go through and look at the 10 core business processes and make sure that our processes are robust enough and generate the type of they pass the qualifications that a Fortune 1000 client is looking for. And I want to be precise about what I mean in terms of pass the qualification or the requirement that they're looking for. And this falls under the category of language matters. If you've done the work to go through and review these 10 core business processes, you're going to, one, talk the customer's language, because invariably somebody that you're talking with is involved in one of these 10 processes. And if you've done this for your business, then you know the exact language to use when you talk to them about their business. But more precisely, you know how to talk about what makes your business different, so that you can effectively demonstrate the innovation that your company offers in their language. And so the 10 core business processes, it's about two things. Is one, about you having a fundamental understanding about how business operates. And then secondly, it allows you to decode conversation so that you can A, answer the right question, and B, effectively position what you are trying to do. Now, this becomes important with alliances and picking partners, because you can look at this list and you can see where you're currently strong, where you're not strong, where a relationship with a potential partner can help you to address any deficiencies, and therefore build out your operating capacity to handle the multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts, which, if you're going it alone, would take a lot more time and a lot more money.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely perfect sense. So tell me more.
So with that, let's start with how we are defining an alliance. You're going to have a number of people talk about how they define these. They're going to use terms like a partnership, a joint venture. In some cases, they will talk about them whether or not you legally create another company or things like that. The way I'm talking about it for the purpose of this presentation and in general is I'm talking about it in terms of it being a relationship that helps you to achieve long-term goals. In this case, it's strategic alliances are defined as agreements between firms in which each commits resources to achieve a common set of objectives. Now, that may sound like a simplistic definition, but what I will tell you is oftentimes people put agreements together and never commit resources to do a doggone thing. So what I would say is, as a rule of thumb, if you're talking strategic, first and foremost, you probably can only have bandwidth for about 2 or 3 of them. And you should assume that a strategic relationship can easily take up 20 to 40% of your organization's time, and especially yours personally. I know as a buyer, I couldn't manage more than 3. There was not enough hours in the day to manage more than 3 strategic alliances for to said multi-billion. I think the company was well over, at the time I was working with them, coming up on 300 billion at that time, probably today well over 750 billion in revenue. But once again, I didn't have the bandwidth to manage more than 3. If you're a small business owner and you say you got 7 or 8, I can tell you that there's some neglect going on someplace. But I want you to think about this, and we're using the word strategic to say, if you start looking at a relationship that's going to position your company for multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts that's going to get you to your revenue and profitability goals in 3 to 5 years, how many of those relationships can you really and truly have? And the answer is not that many. And that's what differentiates strategic relationships from other relationships. Now, who might you have them with? You can have them with a wide variety of players. You can actually have them with customers, suppliers, in some cases, competitors, universities, or divisions of different governments. And the goal of this is to improve your competitive position. You can gain entry into new markets. You can actually get access to critical skills, equipment, and other kinds of things that you may not have access to right now. And you can share the risk. We talked about the cost impact in order for you to develop major projects. One of the ones that I like to talk about is, if we're going to turn on the Wayback Machine, is AT&T and Apple when the iPhone first came out. If you look at the 3 to 5 year plan for that, it's totally obvious that was a successful relationship. It was a successful relationship for AT&T because if you remember, they used that relationship to transition from both long distance, because long distance was hogging bandwidth in their wires and their cables, and analog hogged a lot of space in their wires, and they were able to use that relationship to go to digital. And digital was AT&T's long-term play, and they leveraged their core business of their wires investment. All right, and they're still known for wires. That's why they're a telecommunications company. It's how much they push through the pipe. That's why we keep hearing about 3G, 2G, 5G, all these other kinds of things, because it's about throughput. For Apple, what made it strategic is they had proven with the iPod that they could come up with a device that people loved. It was the form factor, but they were looking for a way to extend further into the ecosystem, as Steve Jobs used to say, to give people a handheld, a device that was an extension of their arm to interact with the world, with the universe. And so for them, it represented a huge market share to leverage both their computer business and their music or their iPod player business, but give people a device that actually allowed them to interact more with the world. And so strategically, when you look at this, AT&T is selling bandwidth, and Apple is selling products that furthers their entire product line. All right. And if you think about this back in that day, and I apologize for going on, but I just love this example, so I'll wrap this up rather quickly. When you start thinking strategically about how these things begin to impact your business, what I like about that example is both companies leveraged their core business. They found a partner that allowed them to bring something truly innovative into the marketplace, and it made a huge amount of difference in the strategic positioning for both companies. And oh, by the way, for those of us that were there, it wasn't by accident that you had to sign a 2-year plan, and you had to sign up for a $30 a month data plan. Now imagine if you're AT&T, what it meant to get $30 a month from the millions of people that they sold phones to for 2 years. And imagine for Apple what it meant to sell millions of devices to people that were hungry for a new experience and able to do things they couldn't do before, for devices that retailed anywhere from $350 to $700, and they could have actually been $1,500, not including any subsidy or any other things that AT&T put into it. And it's like, oh my goodness. And so the reason you would form these things is, yeah, AT&T and Apple probably could have done it by themselves, but working together, they were able to reduce costs. They got access to new technology. They froze the market and could inhibit competitors. They could get into markets they hadn't been in before. They could reduce the amount of time it took to get to market. They could collaborate and improve their R&D, and clearly they came out with a better quality product than had they did it on their own. And all of those reasons are the exact reasons why this could make a world of difference for your business.
This makes perfect sense. This is chocolate and peanut butter. You put those two things together and you've got something that neither manufacturer could do alone well enough to be the rock star that it is when you put them together. So let's talk about that. What makes the customer happy?
So what makes the go. Yeah, so I want to give a couple of a couple of examples of what this looks like, because I talked about this a lot, and it may not make a lot of sense to you yet. It's like, Randall, I heard all the words you said, but it's still not making sense because I have alliances, and I'm like, well, let's kind of crystallize how we are actually defining this. All right. So what we would say, and especially when you start thinking about this from the procurement world, from the buying world, from the corporate supply chain, there's a thing called just a plain Jane agreement. It's a buy sell relationship. So in the example I have on the screen right now, it's like if you hired somebody to build a website, if you hired GoDaddy to go build a website for you, okay, or if you just signed up for fulfillment by Amazon and you paid them to give you a storefront, that would be an agreement. So how does that differ from an alliance? An alliance tends to be a little bit longer term because it's greater than the plain Jane buy-sell relationship, and it tends to be for a key or a specific activity. So if we use our website example, it's somebody's building a website for you, but they're hosting and maintaining the site, and they're probably actively managing the site content for you. So that's different than somebody build a website and you do everything on yourself. An alliance is somebody's doing something a bit more for you and you're trusting them with your brand. If they are actively managing your site content and they are maintaining the site, they're doing quite a bit of things on your behalf. Now, let's talk about what makes this strategic, okay? And what makes it strategic is when somebody's doing a core business, as we talked about with Apple, where you're bolting two different cores together to make a bigger solution in the marketplace. So in this one, let's just say hypothetically, you are a web-based company with 50% of customers and sales driven by your website. You're an e-commerce business. Your alliance partner is responsible for the web experience while you focus on production and fulfillment. You're just doing logistics and warehousing. You have revenue and cost sharing agreements. Now, what I want you to think about in the strategic alliance example is if one partner does not perform, what's the impact on the other partner? And you can see in this case, it's pretty substantial. If we take the Apple and AT&T example, it's pretty substantial. So now you've got that mutual interdependency going on, and you can see how when everybody's working together, and their outcomes are linked, that everybody does well together. And that makes it win-win. And because you're marrying core businesses, that's what makes it strategic.
That this makes perfect sense and just completely opens up your mind to, it's not just things that logically, a telephone and a manufacturer of a device go together. You could probably do this for things that you would never think go together, and yet you see how they leverage brand power.
Oh, absolutely. Let me give you some examples. People never really thought about the Ford and Eddie Bauer. I mean, and we all went through it. They actually had Eddie Bauer branded vehicles. And it's like, why was that significant? Well, that was significant because the Eddie Bauer buyer spent a lot more time outdoors, and Ford was trying to get their SUVs and crossovers to appeal more to the outdoors buyer.
Oh, this is perfect sense. I mean, it's the FootJoy Cruiser. It's the Eddie Bauer Explorer, right? Oh, I mean, it just makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. And clearly for Eddie Bauer to have a relationship with a large manufacturer like Ford, that just gave them global name recognition on a scale that they had never seen before for a number of their other products that weren't even tied to the vehicle. I mean, their camping gear and all that other kind of stuff. More people were now aware of, what all can Eddie Bauer do for me? Spotify and Uber for the services folks out there. That relationship has kind of changed over time, but the idea was initially you could have something on your playlist in Spotify. You can jump into your Uber and you could listen and you could continue your experience while you are commuting. And just to know that you could continue to continue your Spotify experience was a win-win for Uber because no one else was offering that at the time. One of my favorites, HP and Disney. You have to once again turn on the Wayback Machine when you understand that animation historically was done in paper. What would happen is they would a sketch artist would sketch out the different scenes, and then you've seen them do this where they fan the paper to make it look like motion. So they would do that, but then they would take a picture, they would put it on a reel-to-reel frame, and that's how we had the old style Disney animation. So when Mr. Hewlett and Mr. Packard got with Walt Disney back in the day, and they started figuring out how to digitize that, this is a long-standing relationship that really and truly has helped put both companies on the map. Now, one of my favorites is McDonald's and Martin Brower, because most people don't understand that McDonald's core business is real estate. They're a franchise model. They don't actually own that many stores. Their franchise owners actually own the stores. So what they did, being a real estate company, was they did somebody else to do the logistics and the fulfillment. So Martin Brower actually does all the inventory. Martin Brower works the supply chain to make sure that all of the cups and forks and knives and burgers and everything else that goes into the McDonald's store and the trucking to get it there, Martin Brower does all of that and the warehousing. If Martin Brower one day says, we're not going to do business with you anymore, McDonald's is out of business from a Golden Arches delivering burgers and fast food perspective. Most of us don't even think twice about the Barnes Noble and Starbucks relationship, but that one's been around for a while because the easiest thing to do when you're in Barnes Noble is just to have a cup of Starbucks coffee now. So you see that one working out. I've talked a lot about AT&T and Apple, and I'm going to finish with Ford and Rivian because that one has changed just recently in the last 6 months. Originally, Ford knew that they probably weren't going to catch up with Tesla on battery technology, so they did two things. They did a strategic alliance with Rivian, and they took an equity stake in Rivian. In the last few months, they have terminated their strategic alliance, and they have decided to go in a slightly different direction with battery technology because they went ahead and built that capability in-house. But you think about when they initially signed that deal, it was extremely strategic for both companies because Ford knew they were going 100% electric. Now, for Ford, when they exited the deal with Rivian and sold their stock in Rivian, I don't recall how many billions of dollars they made off that. Rivian was actually able to get the attention of Amazon and start providing the battery technology for Amazon's fleet of trucks. So even getting that alliance going for the 3 years it was in place ended up being a huge win for both companies. Just FYI on that one.
It makes perfect sense. So assuming that I could think of it, how do I do it? What's my next steps?
There are 3 steps to the process. All right. The 3 steps is number 1, you need to identify the opportunity for an alliance in your business. Number 2, you need to figure out how do you start to build a relationship, a trust-based relationship, somebody that's not going to go after your customers, somebody that's not going to try and steal your business, somebody's not going to try and steal your intellectual property. So how do you get a trust-based relationship? How do you properly structure it? We talked earlier at the beginning of this talk about whether or not you might form a legal joint venture or you might, that's all structure. So you have to think through what structure makes the most sense for you. How do you negotiate win-win and not win-lose? Once you get that done, the 2 remaining big pieces, how do you market this thing so that the Fortune 1000 understand what's different about your business and what's the solution that you're bringing to the market now as opposed to the product that you're bringing to the market? And then more specifically, your ability to handle the large jobs, the large books of work. And of course, most importantly, how do you manage this thing so that it continues to deliver on the results that you designed it to do? These aren't relationships where you sign them and forget about them, because they will atrophy, they will go dead, they will end up becoming albatrosses around your neck, and that they're no longer serving the original purpose. So how do you manage to make sure it is driving the purpose you sought out? You think about AT&T and Apple to this day, starting from a relationship that started in the 90s, that their relationship is still driving benefit for both parties to this day. And then with that, you know, we talked about on previous Thrives the various different opportunities that you have getting into the Fortune 1000. We will tell you there's no less than 36 different ways, and it's a matter of you identifying whether items are purchased at the corporate level or at the field or plant level. It's an issue of you understanding the type of spend that they have, whether it's planned, unplanned, construction, major projects, or others. And it's a matter of you understanding whether or not this is something that goes into cost of goods sold, something that goes into the product they're manufacturing. If it's a car manufacturer, it's something that they put in the car, that means direct, or if it's indirect. When you understand what your core business is, where you play, what's the fastest way for you to get into a customer, how a potential alliance partner can support you, what you guys are building together, then your opportunities just fall out the woodwork in terms of what you can do in getting your multi-year, multi-million-dollar corporate contract.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, it just makes sense. I'm sorry I was chatting away there and trying to answer your question. And speaking of questions, why don't we see what our audience has? So, is this a good spot? Can we take a few questions?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So, for those of you that are listening, if you got a question now, or if you've asked a question already, Adam is driving for us here, and he's going to read off some of the questions.
Hey, Rob. Yeah, and Randall, we don't have any questions from the audience right at this moment.
All right. Well, I got one that I received on this, and
so go ahead.
It kind of goes to the question that you asked, Rob, where people say, well, Randall, okay, how do I get started on this? And what I will typically say, in order for you to do this right, because if you do it wrong, you'll be forever unwinding a bad deal. Okay. One of the biggest challenges that I see in people doing this work is you try to, quote unquote, get in where you fit in. And oftentimes you've taken on a lot of work that you said, hey, you know, I'll take this. It'll help me meet payroll. It'll help me keep the doors open. It isn't really what I want to do, but I can do it. And with alliances, I want you to be careful about building alliances around that purpose. The first thing you should do in trying to understand how to approach an alliance is be clear on your core business. And what I mean by that is your core business is what it is you do better than anyone else. And a lot of cases, your core business may not actually be what you sell. You may sell widgets, but it turns out that what your customer loves is your customer service, your project management, your attention to detail, your reliability. Interestingly enough, you know, we talked about McDonald's. Everybody thinks their core business is selling burgers. No, their core business is real estate. Everybody used to think that Levi's core business was blue jeans. No, their core business is their fabric manufacturing, which is why they were able to create Old Navy, Gap, Banana Republic, because doing fabric stitching and fabric manufacturing, they were able to stamp a brand on pretty much anything and get it around the globe. So when you start thinking about what actually is your core business, then that helps you in two ways with an alliance. One is it helps you to make sure you don't give away the store. All right. When you are negotiating with folks and when you're putting these things together, because you know where your moneymaker is. And then the second thing, it helps you to be intentional about what actually is the scalable part of your business. You want a core business that is scalable so that if you are known for one thing, okay, well, once again, we talked about this with AT&T. They were known for wires. They have cables circling the globe. They're known for wires. We get caught up in long distance and all these other kinds of things, but AT&T is a wires company. All right. And they can scale wires like there's no tomorrow, which is why we know about 5G, 4G, and all these other kinds of, quantum fiber and all these other kinds of things. That's how we know about this stuff, because that's what their core is. And that's why they never have issues with negotiating when it comes to their core. They're clear on that. They don't give away their intellectual property. They don't negotiate what they do best. So when you start thinking about what is your core business, it should be something that is leverageable and scalable. So that means when you start having to talk about what you're going to go to the bank and say you need investment in and where you're going to get your quickest return from the money that you make, it needs to be in your core business. And then you can design around that and building out with strategic alliance partners what it means to put your core with a strategic alliance partner's core and potentially another strategic alliance partner's core to pull a solution that the market will find extremely compelling and innovative.
It makes perfect sense. I've got another question here. What is the greatest challenge in making an alliance work?
What I would tell you is trust. And the reason and the primary reason most strategic alliances fail is because they were built on improper foundations. And one of those foundations being trust. And I want to just take a second on this and say it's not an issue that people are inherently untrustworthy. It's more of an issue of what is the trust consideration you take to the relationship. If you tend to believe that people are to be trusted until they give you a reason not to trust them, then you might, the business risk to you is that there may be some things you overlooked thinking they weren't going to be an issue, and then it creates challenges that you have to deal with on the back end because you were prepared to move forward in good faith. Now, the flip side is if you trust no one, then by the time you end up doing the due diligence to get you to a level that gets you to a comfort level, the transaction and the opportunity could have passed, and you may be seeing bad behavior and intentions that may not actually be what's going on. And I see a lot more of that in putting these relationships together, especially in the front end, when you see money on the table and you say, I just need to find somebody that I can partner with, and you put these things together hoping for the best, but people may be misaligned on those issues.
No, thank you. You're right. And believe it or not, we've got a bunch more questions, but we've only got time for one more. So, and this sort of goes with what you just described. But before I ask that question, I will just share that if you have asked a question and we haven't answered it yet, don't worry. We're going to share all of these questions and answers, including the ones that we received but didn't answer here live, to everybody and to all the participants. So you're going to get this as part of your notes. So the last question is somewhat related to what you were just describing around trust, which is how do you minimize self-interest, right? If you've got two parties that do their own thing, how do you work that so that way one organization isn't really trying to win at the expense of the other?
What I would tell you is embrace self-interest in this regard. You don't want a codependency, you want a mutual interdependency. And what I mean by mutual interdependency is win-win. You want to develop the relationship where somebody understands that it makes good business sense for them to invest in their partner, because investing in their partner helps them to get to where they want to be.
That makes perfect sense. And with that, I think it's very noteworthy to talk about the Diversity Consortium, because we are a group of 25 alliances, and our alliances are organizations that have been doing supplier diversity for, well, on an average over 17 years, believe it or not. And these are organizations that do everything from strategy and onboarding and outreach to training and mentoring and coaching, and all those facets of supplier diversity from a corporate perspective as well as from a XBE perspective. So we've brought them all to the table, and the value proposition that we share to both our corporate clients and our XBE clients is that we have this breadth. So on the left-hand side there, you see some of those offerings towards a corporate or an organizational supplier diversity need in terms of strategy and program management and compliance, and how do you put all that together. And then from an XBE perspective, how do I win more work? How do I make my organization better? Because at the end of the day, being diverse is not enough. From the buyer's seat, what they're looking for, and Randall, you hit the nail on the head earlier. You were describing how it really matters about the quality and the value that you're offering your customer. And so it's quality, it's cost, it's delivery, it's responsiveness. And by the way, they're also looking for diverse businesses. So you put all that together, and you've got to take your business and make sure that you've got all those bases covered. So that's what we do. And again, I am Rob Travia, and on behalf of myself, the Diversity Consortium, and Randall Dobbins, these are events that we hold every month here at the XBE Thrive series. You could see that our next event is it's on April 28th. And I'm just going to check that for sure. And it is indeed April 28th at 3 p.m. And I would like to thank you all. And on behalf of Randall and myself, we look forward to seeing you at the Thrive events. We also offer micro sessions, which are a bit of a deeper dive on some specific topics. So if you've got a question, or you've got something that you'd just like to hear a little bit more about, by all means, join us. These are things that we hold every month. And we thank you for listening. We value your time. And if we can answer any questions for you at any time, please feel free to reach out. You see Randall and my email addresses and our phone numbers directly. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.